Hello everyone and welcome to this seminar on additional support for learning, supporting me, supporting them in inclusive practice. I'm Anne Keenan, I'm the Assistant Secretary for Education and Equalities with the EIS, and I'm delighted to be welcoming you today with my colleague Pauline McColgan and with our colleagues from the Open University, Carolyn Cook and Khatija Patel. They'll all just give you a quick wave just now because time is short, and they'll introduce themselves more fully in the chat function. So just to make you aware that the session is being recorded today, and we'd be grateful if you could keep your microphones muted during the presentations. And if you don't want your image to be captured, then please also feel free to put your cameras off. The session will, however, be interactive, and we would ask that you have a pen and paper at the ready. We also have recorded contributions for the session today, one from Tasha, a care experienced young person who is now studying to become a teacher, and one from Trish McQueen, an ASN teacher and former member of the EIS ASN network. And I'll tell you a little more about their contributions shortly. But first of all, I just want to take some time to say a huge thank you to you all for taking the time to come along today and join us. We know how busy you are, and we appreciate the huge challenge which excessive workload brings and the competing demands on your time. So thanks again for prioritising this session. I'm going to get us started by giving a little bit of background and context for the seminar today and how it sits with EIS policy. When we were talking about the focus of our contribution to the Scottish Learning Festival, it was just after EIS AGM. And given the number of resolutions around the importance of additional support needs and inclusive practice, we wanted to make that a focus of this contribution. As we begin to emerge from the pandemic, we are hearing increasing accounts from members about the rising level and complexity of need in children and young people across Scotland, the distressed behaviours which many are witnessing in their classrooms, and the delays in accessing appropriate support. Now more than ever, we believe that there is a need for additional investment in core provision to reduce class sizes and class contact time, to ensure that teachers and other education staff have the time they need to build meaningful relationships with the learners in their classes, with their families, and with the range of other professionals who may be supporting children and young people. We need time for teachers to engage in professional learning, to develop the range of support strategies to meet the needs of learners, and investment in specialist ASN teachers and support assistants to help deliver that support in practice in classrooms. And although the importance of this additional time and resource is even more evident just now, it's not something that's new. The EIS has been highlighting this for many years. Back in 2019, our publication, ASN Exploring the Gap Between Policy and Practice, outlined the barriers to implementation of inclusive education and the need for urgent action. And Pauline will put the link to that contribution in the chat function at the end so that you have access to that. But as you're only too well aware, the issues that were highlighted in that document remain today, and we are continuing to raise them with the Scottish Government in a range of fora. In this short session, we will look at some of the positive outcomes which can be realised when dedicated time and resource is given to supporting teachers, when there are opportunities for professional learning to impact on practice, and when the autonomy and the professionalism of teachers is valued in a collegiate and empowering system. We're then going to use these positive experiences to look at an approach called appreciative inquiry, and explore whether there is anything you can take away just now to help you in supporting children and young people in your settings. As I mentioned earlier, we have two presentations, the first from Tasha, who we're delighted has come forward to share her experience of the impact which one of her secondary teachers had in supporting her as a care experienced young person in overcoming barriers and in helping her to achieve her dream of studying to become a teacher herself, so that she could in turn support others. And then we have a contribution from Trish McQueen, who has been a teacher for over 16 years and a former member of our ASN network. She outlines how professional learning has supported her as a specialist ASN teacher and how being given time, resources and space supported her to work in a collegiate environment in which the professionalism of all was valued. But before we hear from Tasha and Trish, Caroline is going to give us an overview about appreciative inquiry and get us thinking about how some of the positive messages in these presentations might influence our lives and our practice. Caroline, I'll hand over to you now.
Thanks very much, Anne, and it's lovely to be here and see so many people in this session. I hope we're going to get the glitch with our PowerPoint sorted as I speak, but otherwise I'll ad-lib, Pauline, so don't panic. Okay, so we're going to start thinking about appreciative inquiry, which is based on storytelling. So we all tell stories about our contexts and practices, stories about relationships, and all these stories are underpinned by our own values, what we consider to be important, what we want to tell each other. In that sense, we are all authors of the stories that we tell about our practices. So our stories of supporting me, supporting us are very specific. So we can't come in this short session and necessarily say, this is your problem, do it like this, and it'll all be better. And yet sometimes, quite often actually, professional learning can be framed a little bit like that we start from the problem, we start from what's going wrong, what can we, what do we feel isn't right? And often other people's stories are shared as a way of us providing, of us getting solutions. We look to other people's stories about what they say. But sometimes when we listen to these stories, we struggle to think, well, yes, that's all very well, but what does that mean for me in my context? So today, as well as hearing stories from practitioners, we also want to focus on your stories as a catalyst for reflective imagining about what comes next. And that's at the heart of appreciative inquiry. Pauline, I'm still not seeing the PowerPoint, so I'll just plough on. Maybe you could put a note in the chat as to where you're up to. So appreciative inquiry has been around for over a decade, but it hasn't really taken hold in education in the same way it has in other sectors. Perfect, excellent, thank you. And on to the next slide. Thanks, Pauline. Like a lot of inquiry or reflective cycles, there are 4 phases, but you'll notice the words are quite different to those that we commonly use in education. You can see words like dreaming, appreciating, possibilities, design, living. And at the centre of this cycle is a positive core, a recognition that we don't always have to start from a problem and try and solve it, but sometimes we can start from what's already working well, what is supporting us to be the best we can be, and then trying to generate and extend those aspects of practice. So taking an appreciative approach isn't about ignoring problems, but it is about building from what already feels right to us, what fits with our values and our experiences. So today we're going to give you just a really tiny taster of appreciative inquiry. But first we're going to hear stories from Trisha and Tash, full of examples of talking and thinking appreciatively about their experiences. And while you listen to them, I'd like you to use the chat box to type in keywords and phrases that jump out at you as being important, meaningful, appreciative and hopeful. And in this, there's loads and loads of us here, so the chat box is going to go absolutely bonkers, and that's fine. So don't worry if you repeat what other people have typed, it doesn't matter. It's about tuning into that appreciative, that positive view of what's going on. So now we will hear from Tasha and Trish. The volume levels between the speakers do vary, so please do adjust your own volume settings so that you can hear it the best you can, and start writing in the chat box. I'll see you in a moment.
How did the support I received in school help me achieve my goals? Well, from the day 1 in first year to my last day in 5th year, I always had such a close-knit relationship with my guidance teacher. She helped me through, going into first year, going into care, like well, I didn't sit an exam, but all the assessments we done to get our grades during the COVID years, she was always there every step of the way. She was always checking in on me, asking how I was. She always offered me so much support, no matter what it was, whether it was personal, to do with school, just anything. So I always knew I wanted to leave secondary at 5th year and go straight to university. So we were always talking about, how we were going to do this, what supports do I need in place, how much support do I need in certain classes. We were always talking about it, and we were always honest with each other and saying, well, actually, I think it might need a bit more in this, I need a bit more in that. We're just always honest and constantly talking about it and working together to make sure their goals were the same. Very much so the support was step by step, you know, from it could change on a weekly basis, it could change on a monthly basis, but whatever I needed, I knew I was going to get, I would just go and ask, you know, can I get a bit of time out of this class to go and catch up on some maths or English, and I knew I could always get it as long as I was just open and honest with her and, you know, explained, like, I feel like I'm slipping a wee bit here, or can you get in contact with this teacher, I'm needing a wee bit more support. I could always just have it and it was there, and she'd always help me, and she, you know, she'd say, look, I can do this, and this, let's work together, let's get this done, let's get you to the next step. How will the support I receive shape me and help me with others? Definitely it taught me the type of teacher that I want to become, so seeing a teacher that was so nurturing, so caring and so passionate about not just me but other pupils made me realise that, you know, that's the teacher I want to be. I want to be that teacher. Next steps in my education journey are obviously to get my degree in primary teaching and to, you know, secure a job after my probation year and go and then, you know, inspire and bring up the next generation of hopefully teachers and other professionals that we need in the world, and, you know, help guide other children that have maybe struggled at home or just need a wee bit more support, just help them get to where they want to be and in the best way possible, and making sure that the supports that they need are in place, and yeah, just being the best teacher I can be.
Hi, let me introduce myself. I'm Trish McQueen, a fully qualified additional support needs teacher for 3 to 18-year-olds. The majority of my teaching experience has taken place in the Central Belt, initially in North and East Ayrshire, followed by a few years in Glasgow, where I taught on the initial teacher education programmes at the University of Strathclyde, then returned to school teaching in West Lothian before moving to the Highlands just over a year ago. It is such a privilege to have been invited to speak on behalf of the EIS today and to bring this presentation on supporting us in inclusive practice, a teacher perspective. I worked as a youth worker for community education and church youth groups for many years before becoming a qualified teacher in my early 30s. I initially qualified in secondary, religious, moral and philosophical studies back in 2006 and later migrated into additional support needs as I missed working with young people in a more directly supportive way. You see, my early career in youth work had given me a real passion for working with young people and supporting their development, which is why teaching itself was such a natural progression for me. I've been working with young people now for over 30 years and I still get so much fulfilment from each interaction. Being able to help people and help meet their needs is so important to me. This is part of my teacher identity. This is who I am and why I do what I do. It's to make a difference in the lives of young people. It's very telling that there's no initial teacher education into additional support needs. Rather, it's a progressive career choice where you must already be a teacher to take on this very important role. It requires experience in teaching and a knowledge of the systems and processes in schools and capacity to build on these experiences and knowledge. Becoming an ESN teacher is usually driven by a desire within you and an appreciation of the specialism required. That is why having an ESN qualification was important to me. It shows real dedication and a willingness to grow and develop my teaching capacity, skills and knowledge, allowing me greater job satisfaction and further motivating me to work to the best of my ability, which is again part of my teacher identity. Although I have an ASN qualification, it is not a necessary requirement for teaching additional support needs. I self-funded my ASN qualification, which I gained from participating in a university master's course in inclusive practice. The great thing about the master's is that it comes with many module options, allowing you to choose which are right for you. which tend to be those most prevalent in your current practice. For me, at the time, it was neurodiversities. So I chose modules around autism, ADHD, dyslexia, children's rights and participation at the exclusion of many others. I was therefore very excited to see the EIS were working with the University of Strathclyde to bring teachers specialist ASN-based professional learning. I'm thrilled to have been able to benefit from that EIS 10-week ASN course, which started, I think, around this time last year and spanned quite a few months. The course itself covered 10 topics, which filled gaps in my knowledge and gave me wider perspective on additional support needs and inclusive practice, to include things like trauma, special educational behaviour needs, speech and language, complex additional support needs, and much more. This impacted positively on my teaching, as more knowledge gave me greater confidence when dealing with all people involved in the lives of young people with additional support needs, particularly professionals. I cannot describe the benefits of being recognised as a specialist and being given autonomy and agency within this role. Additional support needs teachers acting on their own initiative and not being micromanaged is the most positive way for schools to approach ASN. Fortunately, this was my experience in my most recent primary school in Highland and within my previous high school in West Lothian. As well as being given autonomy, I was given time and space to implement provision. By this, I mean being given various spaces to use, such as a classroom, innovation or sensory rooms, meeting rooms, nurture rooms, this kind of thing. Been given unrestricted time to have contact with pupils, teachers, parents, professionals, external agencies, and time to observe and implement and reflect and change what doesn't work and do more of what does. That time to reflect, implement, observe, and take feedback from everyone possible. I cannot stress enough the importance of that time, of reflective practice to enable change. Having a holistic approach, one that involves everyone in the child's life, is at the heart of additional support needs and is the essence of GIRFEC. Relationships are therefore key to the success of any additional support needs role. Building meaningful and sustainable relationships with pupils, teachers, support staff, parents and other professionals and agencies takes time. So being given time to develop these relationships is crucial, as it is often with investing the time that the trust comes. It is so important that each person you interact with feels seen and heard. Your approach as an ASN teacher often leads to bridging the gap between other professional services and parents or young people. It's equally important that you can speak with everyone in and on their terms. So understanding the terminologies used by professionals is equally important as being able to speak with parents about these in a way that's accessible to them and with young people. Your input is key, your approach is what matters, so meet people where they are. So let's reflect on what's been said. The EIS is supporting us to support them. Being given opportunities to participate in such valuable professional learning by the EIS has been extremely positive for me. We as colleagues further support each other to support our young people, parents and other agencies by working collegiately. And being given teacher autonomy and time to work collegiately with young people, parents, colleagues and other professionals is an integral part of the additional support needs role. Let's remember too the positives I spoke about from my experiences of being given autonomy, such as time to form those relationships and do all the necessary parts of additional support needs, which include observation, reflection and intervention in those cycles. Being given the use of spaces. These are the things that improved outcomes for everyone. My message in a nutshell is to invest in specialists and give them time to do their very important work. And so I'll leave with you the reason, the why we do what we do. And I'd like to remind you that all teachers have a responsibility to meet the additional support needs of the pupils in their schools. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Great. Thank you again to Trish and Tasha. Their stories absolutely exemplify what it means to reflect appreciatively. And from the stream of words and phrases in the chat box, we've picked out together the nature, the kind of the essence of their stories. And we often hear people talking appreciatively about practices in conferences like this, telling us positive stories about changes or initiatives or ideas that they've put into practice. But I wonder, as you were typing and as you were listening, how many of us thought about the phrase, yes, but that's difficult to implement in my situation, or yes, but I don't have that support, those resources. We're used to problematizing. We're used to attempting to understand things from a problem. You know, we unpick them in that way, in that problematizing way. We're used to being highly pragmatic. What can I do right now that works? What can I learn from this that I can take and implement? But appreciative inquiry asks us to consider sort of standing back a little bit from that immediacy, to think about, you know, what were the most important supports that they had for change? What can I learn from that? Why were they able to do what they did? What emotions or reactions were evident that told them that this is right? And what relationships did they have that were key to their experiences? Now, those are all questions that we can flip. So we can say, yes, we can learn from others using those questions, but we can also think about our own stories from them. And that's what we're going to do now. Appreciative inquiry is fundamentally underpinned by storytelling. So now we're going to write our own stories. So now's your time to grab a piece of paper and a pen or a pencil. And we can go on to the next slide. Thank you, Pauline. So what we're going to do is a short activity called free writing. You may know it, you may have done it before, or you might use it with young people yourself. So free writing is a technique that allows us to stop self-editing. It stops us saying yes, but. It allows us to carry on and be in a bit of a state of flow where you keep exploring beyond the surface level. So what we're going to do is we're going to write for 3 to 4 minutes. I'll deal with the timer aspect. You're going to write whatever comes to mind, and I'll tell you what the theme is in a minute. You're going to write in full sentences and not worry at all about punctuation, spelling, grammar, any of that doesn't matter. And the key to free writing is not to stop. If you can't think of something to write, you can write, I don't know what to write, over and over until something comes to mind. But I don't actually think in this scenario you will get too stuck, because I'm going to give you something very specific to think about. What I want you to write about is an incident in your practice which you feel exemplifies either you being supported by others or you supporting someone else or a group. Okay, so an incident that support is about being supported or you supporting. And it should be a really positive instance, something where you feel pride or joy or happiness or satisfaction with what happened. And it could be that what happened was really good, or it could be that it was the best it possibly could be in that circumstance, and you have a sense of pride in that. Okay, so I've realised that I've not given you very long to think of an incident. I hope that you've all thought of something now. And as I say, I'm going to start the timer, and you're going to write between 3 and 4 minutes. I'll give you a 30-second sort of warning, and you're going to just keep writing about that incident, as much detail, as much thinking as you can around what happened at that moment, in that time, in that space. Okay, so I will stop talking now and I will set my timer off, and about 3.5 minutes, off you go. Sorry to interrupt. If you could just make sure that all of your microphones are off. I'm hearing a bit of interference coming back. Thank you. A 30-second warning. Okay, and if you can complete the sentence you're on. And if we were doing this in a more expansive session, or if we were trying to delve even deeper, we would do this for a little bit longer, and we'd write lots of stories about lots of different incidents, and we would collate them. But if you look at what you've created, even if in a few minutes, hopefully you've got a fairly chunky piece of writing now. So now what do we do with it? How can we use these stories to get to the important bit, the essence, just like we did when we were listening to the videos? So what we're going to use is a technique called found poetry. And if you could go on to the next slide for me, Pauline, thank you. And found poetry is a technique to distill in a few words what we feel is really important. So what I'd like you to do is to read through your writing. And as you read, I want you to highlight words or short phrases that catch your attention. And what we're going to do is we're going to form these words and phrases into a short poem. Now, don't worry, it's not rhyming. You know, you don't need to have it rhyming. You don't need to have a formulated structure or anything like that. You can see from the example at the bottom, which was from a novel, they've highlighted 3 sections, and it just says, next was a whisper, very close to me, there is nothing. Okay, so it's something along those lines. So I'll give you just a couple of minutes to highlight your words and form a short poem. And if anyone feels brave enough, it would be fantastic to see some of your poems in the chat box, as long as they don't reveal any confidentialities about your context or people that you work with. Stephanie, for a moment there, I thought that was your poem. It took me a minute to realise. But if you want to put your poems on the Twitter hashtag, that would be brilliant too. Let other people know what we've been up to in this session. Okay, so hopefully by now, or just about now, you will have created a short poem. As I say, it'd be lovely to see some examples in the chat box if you feel able to. And what we're going to do is that poem, that essence of your story that you've distilled down from that writing that you've done, is going to form the centre of our positive core. Okay, that's going to be the positive core at the centre of our appreciation of our practices. So Pauline, if you could go on to the next slide. Brilliant. So what we're going to do is I'd like you to take that found poem and maybe get a clean piece of paper and write that in the centre as if it's the centre of a mind map. We're going to create a mind map. There are some lovely ones coming through in the chat. Fantastic. Nicole, I love that one. There's a sense of, you know, the relief and the calm actually in the way that you can read it to yourself as well. And I love the smiley face at the end of yours, Amanda. I think that's really, really important. All of the things you've got in there. Positive impact, a real success story. Lovely. Grab that feeling. Okay, so we should have all written our poems into, I could just read all of these all day. I'm not going to because I'm going to get behind time. Put your poem in the centre of your mind map, and then we're going to think about this mind map as a series of layers, a bit like an onion. Okay, so the first layer is I want you to now draw stems out from this and think about the strengths. What were the strengths? What can you appreciate about that particular story that give you those kind of those moments where you think, oh, that's why it went like that. That was what was important in this situation. So what are the strengths we have in our practices, in our relationships, in our context that let this incident play out the way it did? And you're going to put those on lots and lots of lines shooting out from the middle. Now, you might find that some of the strengths you've identified are particular people, or it could be a particular environment that you were in, or it could be a particular resource that you were using, or it could be something different. It could be about an attitude that someone had that day, or a willingness to try something. There could be lots and lots of reasons why that incident worked the way that it did. But what we want to do is we want to grab those things because they're important to thinking about how we can develop our practice further. So the second layer of our sort of onion mind map, sorry to confuse metaphors here, but onion mind map, the second layer is to push out from each of those points that you've created and add another point on from it about how can we use that particular strength or that particular thing that happened or was working well in that particular incident to do more with it. So an example might be, for example, if it was about the particular room that you were using, that actually the room played a massive part in how that incident worked out for whatever reason. It could be to do with the sound quality, it could be to do with the deadened carpet, it could be due to the fact that actually you were dealing with something on soft furnishings, soft chairs, rather than sitting at desks in a classroom. And then think about, what does that tell me about what I can use that space for in the future? How could I maximize the potential of that space? Another example might be a particular relationship. You might have found that actually someone else was supporting you that day or in that particular moment, and their support really enabled you to do what you needed to do. So how can you maximize that person's relationship with you? How can you make sure that what they have and what they support you with is something that you can use over and over again in different ways? So you could think about, what could you extend? What of these things could you extend? What could you try out? What ideas does this generate? Who could you share this with? Why would that be important? Who could help you take this practice, this appreciative practice further? To say this is working really well, but actually we're not doing as much with it as we should be doing right now. Now, if we were doing a course in appreciative inquiry, if we had lots and lots of time, we would spend time sharing all these different steps, thinking more deeply about all of these different steps. This is really just a very quick taster of thinking appreciatively about what we have. And as I said, this isn't to downplay the challenges, but it's to recognise that even if we feel that we're right up against it, that there will be times, there will be moments, there will be opportunities, little cracks maybe, for us to grab hold of something that is working well and to do more of it, to be that person that, you know, in Trish's presentation, she talked, it's who I am. And if your incident represents who you are in terms of the values that you appreciate, then it's worth grabbing that and trying to develop something from it. So if we could go on to the next slide, Pauline. So in this incredibly brief session, we have considered how we listen to other people's appreciative stories. We've begun to think appreciatively about our own stories, appreciating the strengths and the possibilities these create for developing our own practices. The next stage, as you can see on the cycle, would be to design what we might do and then to live those ideas out, to understand them in the complexities of our contexts. Now, we all work in different contexts with different limitations and different types of support, but engaging in professional reflective practice through storytelling, where spaces are created to think appreciatively about what works as well as critically about what is possible, is really important. It's really generative. And at the Open University, we have a long history of creating such spaces through our online offer. And I'll now pass over to Khadija to share very briefly a little about this with you. Thanks very much, everyone. I hope you found that interesting and useful.
Thank you very much, Carolyn, for that. It's fantastic to hear that work being done on appreciative inquiry and Tasha's and Trish's account of the ASN support and how it relates to practice. Really super to hear that. So my next couple of slides, which are fairly brief, are going to look at the free and fully funded modules that the OU offers and how you can engage with those modules. So I'm going to kick off with OpenLearn. OpenLearn is the OU's open education resources. All materials on the platform are free and regarded as bite-sized learning. Study can be from a few hours to 48 hours, whatever takes your fancy. For example, the one I've put up here, the Exploring Equality and Equity in Education, is a 10-hour advanced study course, providing an insight into different conceptions of justice and the distinction between equity and equality. OpenLink creates their badge courses and co-created with other organisations. The course we have here, Identifying and Supporting Additional Support Needs in Early Learning and Childcare, was created with the Scottish Government in mind. So OpenLearn also provides a platform for learners to come together to create and upload their own courses. It might be something that grabs your attention, something around the, you might want to build your own course and put it on OpenLink Create. We've got FutureLearn. These are time-limited repeated courses. And finally, we have the micro-credentials, which are 10 to 12 weeks courses, which are fully funded modules. These two courses that appear have been popular with teachers, colleges and support staff, allowing individuals to gain specialist knowledge and help build professional skills. Our recruitment for our next intake is going to be in January. If you're interested, go on and have a look at our website. Can you move the slide along? And this particular slide, the Open University in Scotland, just give you a bit of a brief outline on this. It's the largest provider of part-time undergraduate higher education in Scotland. And in the summer of 2022, our student experience was rated joint best in Scotland alongside St Andrews. Another key notable fact is that 73% of our students work alongside study. So if you'd like to find out more about other opportunities, please contact the OU. Couple of website pages I want to bring your attention to. On the Open University website page, you'll also find the Schools and Learning Education webpage, which contains courses for schools and educators, time to professional learning opportunities as a teacher or practitioner, and study options for your school pupils. Another part of the webpage is collaboration and research, which covers the projects we get involved with across the education sector in Scotland and how you can collaborate with us. And finally, on this particular page, we have a section on global education, how we support children and teachers around the world, including a current project we have in Zambia in partnership with the Scottish Government. To complement this website, we also have regular newsletters, and if you would like a copy of this, get in touch with me. And finally, what I've got here is the unions page. This covers the different innovative ways we have worked with EAS and other unions, including STUC, in accessing skills and lifelong opportunities for their members. I'm going to hand you back to Anne for her closing remarks. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Khadija. We really hope that you found this session valuable and that you've been able to take away something positive which might help you to help the learners in your setting. We will soon be putting a link to this session on the EIS Professional Learning blog, and all the recordings, sources and resources will be made available for you to access at your leisure. In the meantime, please rest assured that the EIS is continuing to campaign for sufficient time and resources to be given to ASL to bridge that gap between policy and practice, and to ensure that the positive outcomes which you've heard from our speakers today can become a reality, bringing equity of opportunity for all. But as you leave, we would ask one final thing. We would love for you all to share the stories, your stories with us. Thanks to those who've done so in the chat, they were really touching. So if you could take some time to send us your poems and your mind maps, or even in the months to come to let us know if they've had an impact on your practice, we would be really grateful. Pauline has put the email in the chat function, so you can contact us through that link. But thanks again to all of you for coming along, and in good storytelling style, I just hope that the remainder of your day has a happy ending. Thanks everybody, and nice to see you all here. Bye.